Okay, we're working on a 2004 Oldsmobile Alero, and we're going to be changing a fuel pump. First thing you're going to want to do is come around to the rear of the car and get it jacked up and support it. Now that the car's jacked up in the air, we're going to slide under to disconnect a few things. We're going to position ourselves under here. We have a bunch of connections to the fuel tank. The first ones we're going to remove the fuel lines. The pressure should be relieved of the system. Since the fuel pump died, we have no pressure on the system at all, so we don't have to worry about much gas leaking. We're going to disconnect this line here, and then come up to the filler where there's a hose clamp, and we're going to disconnect that. After we have the fuel line, return line, or high pressure line unhooked, we're going to come back to the evap line here. What'll help is to get a pick of some sort to pry down these tabs. They do make a tool for it. I don't have it, but that'll be the next thing we take off right there. This piece. You can tell by the hose and case going back to the tank. Now you can see that this is down. You're supposed to be able to squeeze in on these two side tabs here, but it's pretty hard to do that up on top. So I thought it was easier to put the probe in between the small spot here. The next thing we're going to do is come over to the electrical connector. It has a red tab locking the whole connector in. Pull that down. And then if you look on the side here, it's pretty hard to show. There's a little tab holding it in. If you lift up like this on it, oh, it's hard to show. Lift up like this, pull it down, you should be able to take it and wiggle it out. You want to pry this part back. Before we remove the heat shield, what you can do is come up to this exhaust hanger here and remove it, lower the exhaust down, and just let it rest here to give you a little bit more space to work on this heat shield. After that, the next step will be coming to get this heat shield off to give us some more space to work. It has one plastic connector, another bolt here, another one down here, and finally following the exhaust all the way up here. Okay, now that we have the heat shield removed, we're going to finally come up and disconnect the straps holding it here and here. One other bit of advice would be route all of your hoses and stuff below any parts that are mounted to the car here. So when we lower this fuel tank down, it'll be a little bit easier. Depending on how much fuel you have in here, it might be really heavy. Mine is. We're going to support it and then lower the tank down, and then we're going to do our work on the fuel pump outside of the car. Okay, if you did everything correctly, you should be looking at that and this. Got mine out a little bit of a dolly here. We're going to transition to out of the street and switch out the fuel pump. Okay, now that we have the fuel tank out of the vehicle, we're going to come out, inspect our new fuel pump, make sure it's similar. We are going to have to do a little bit of wiring. The next thing we're going to do is remove this lock ring here. Now Kent Moore makes a tool for this. It's quite expensive. I couldn't find one for less than $150. The part number is J39765, and it fits into these rings here to lock it off. We're going to have to go a little savage here and bash it off with a screwdriver. So the clips that you're going to remove, it's nearly impossible to show on the car how to do it, so I had to do it once the tank's out. It's a two-part clip that you actually push up. When you're looking at it at first, it'll be this way. This piece right here comes down. It's that piece right there that swings. This pushes out on one, and then the whole tab slides up and down. You just have to clip in the sides a little bit to make it happen. The final piece we'll need to remove is the evap breather line, and that also has the style that you squeeze together. It will be still difficult. You might want to get in there with a pick, just like the first one, the other side of the evap line under the car. After you have the evap line disconnected, you can come down and remove the return and supply lines to the fuel pump from this here. You can also remove the wire out of the way, because that's what you might have to solder depending on the pump you bought. Once you have the lock ring removed, taken off from the fuel pump, you can start to tilt it out of there. Be careful because it will be full of fuel in the top. You might want to back that out. So now we're on to our new fuel pump here. Check and make sure everything looks the same, functions the same, moving. Come out of here, take the old seal, get rid of that, drop on a new seal. Take our pump and try to carefully feed it in there. Let's see if I can do this here. Let's put you down right here. That's in. So it's nearly impossible to film with two hands and hammer with two hands. What you'll have to do is get this pump down in here and push it down in. You'll know when you've taken it out how it pops up. What I did was lean on it like this with my elbow. Unless you have another person, which I do, but I try to do it with one person just to make sure it was possible. And then you'll still have to hammer it around. Make sure not to hammer too far out to the edges, a little bit further in. Now everything's basically the reverse of the install. You're going to come back up, pop said cap off here, reconnect evap line, listen for click, route these two back down here. Can't do that one-handed. And you'll have little support pieces in here for when it ships. Let's see if I can do this. This is how this clip works. Like that. Squeeze in a little bit on the edges. And push up. Okay, now that we've had our new pump in, we changed our wire end just for our fuel pump specifically. We're going to plug everything in. Now we're going to go back over to the car and test it and install it. Now that we have the tank back under the car, the connector's plugged in, we can quick turn the key to the on position and make sure the fuel pump primes. After confirming your fuel pump works, you can go ahead and install the tank back up into the car. One thing I would advise to do before installing the fuel tank, install a new fuel filter. The next thing, use anti-seize on every bolt. So the way I lifted my tank was I slid it under the car, I put one end over the exhaust, and then lifted it on the other side. Once you have your tank hung in and your bolts slightly threaded, number 1 and number 2 over there, you can torque those at 26 foot-pounds. The next thing you'll want to do is install your exhaust heat shield. The nut will go to 18 inch-pounds and the bolts will go to 9 inch-pounds. And there's one plastic connector on it. The next thing we'll want to do is come up to our exhaust mount here and install that back, 26 foot-pounds. The next step will be reconnecting the evap line and your filler line. You can tighten the hose clamp to 18 foot-pounds. The next thing you'll want to do is reconnect pump power. Listen for the click. And then reinstall the red plastic lock tab. The next thing we'll want to do is come over and install the high pressure and low pressure lines. They're different sizes, so you don't have to worry about mixing them up. After you have everything connected and checked, the next thing you'll want to do is turn the car to the on position and check for the fuel pump to prime. As you can hear, it went on. We appear to have no leaks. So we're going to attempt to start it and take her for a test drive.